you check the children? Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird, and I am here to review a movie that is not horror. Obviously, if you clicked on this, you know what movie I'm reviewing. But yes, we do occasionally not talk about horror movies on the channel. Most times it is a comic book movie if I decide to cover it. And I was able to, or rather I was invited to a screener of this one, a press-only screener. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to see it for free in the theater. So that's why I'm doing this review. But, you know, you guys might find it valuable for at least a different perspective, because I have a feeling this one is going to get crapped on by most people. However, I'm here to say that my opinion, having just walked out of the theater about an hour ago, is that this is the best of the Sony Spider-less Verse, and that's by a long shot, I think. I can only think of Morbius and Madam Web right now. Was there another Spider-less movie? I think it's just those two, but the fact that I can't think of the other one speaks to its quality, I suppose, if there is one. But yeah, Kraven is definitely the best of these movies. And it does not rely on Spider-Man in the least. Now, it does have characters from the Spider-Man, the Marvel universe, I should say. I mean, Spider-Man universe, obviously. But that is the Marvel universe, so it's not like, you know, Marvel characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but the characters in here are from the Marvel comic book universe. And there are two references in specific that I'm not going to spoil, but that I very much appreciated. One is a name drop that I was like, ooh. And I'll save two sentences for a spoiler mini section at the very, very end talking about that. But that actually got my toes a-tingling, that name drop. And then there was another scene as well that was a sort of reference that I won't ruin either. So yeah, overall, guys, I enjoyed Kraven. I thought it was a entertaining movie. It was actually surprisingly self-contained outside of the characters from the Spider-Man / Marvel universe. You know, even those characters in this context, they don't rely on Spider-Man in any way. And actually, it's interesting because Kraven's story doesn't really revolve around Spider-Man all the way up until he hears about Spider-Man and decides to hunt him in the comics. So this is all just before that happens, essentially, because, you know, Kraven has a long history before he even got to Spider-Man. So this fits in that block of time, and luckily they do a good job of, well, for me, again, I can only speak for myself, they did a good job of making me interested in the story. This is not something that kind of glosses over the origin the way that Morbius did, the way that Madam Web did. And the origin portion of this movie is about 25 minutes long. So they give you the backstory of Kraven, and I really appreciated that, and it helped me buy into the characters and the rest of the story. And I was concerned at times, like, well, who's going to be the big bad? Kraven is the bad guy, and they do kind of do the thing where he's sort of more anti-hero than anything else, but that's actually not outside of what Kraven is. He's just a little dirtier in the comics than he is here, but he's still very much a killer. And that is something I want to mention in the overall thoughts as well, is that this is a rated R movie, and boy do they utilize it. And I gotta say, it definitely bolstered my enjoyment of the film. It's not quite Logan levels of gore, but there is a good amount of gore and a couple of kills that really caught me off guard as a horror fan. One in particular, I was like, this is a horror movie kill, and they show it, and it's like, it happens kind of quick, but only because of the mechanism that's being utilized. But my God, there is blood splatter in this movie. I mean, horror adjacent at the least, just for the kills alone. So, okay, so let me kind of break it down a little bit further. But those are my overall thoughts. This was an entertaining ride, and it's one I would actually watch again. So, the story is about Sergei Kravenov, who has a brother, and they have a father named Nikolai Kravenov, and that is played by Russell Crowe. So he plays Sergei's father, and Sergei has a brother named Dmitri, and so there's a thing that happens, and Sergei ends up leaving the home, and he's trying his best not to become his father, who is sort of into a lot of illegal activities. And Sergei becomes much more about the land and animals and protecting, kind of conservationist sort of in the extreme. And so then, we pick up back in the present day with Aaron Taylor Johnson playing Sergei, and it's really cool. Like, the very beginning, the opening 5-10 minutes of the film really sucked me in, and it's really cool action. And I gotta say, Aaron Taylor Johnson, as someone that's been reading Spider-Man since about 1993 in the comics, he nailed the Kravenov personality. Again, they skew him slightly a little bit more, heroic than he is in the comics. He is still bad, and he does still do like egregious things, but it's to bad people. So they do definitely make him more anti-hero than villain in this. But outside of that, Aaron Taylor Johnson really exemplifies what Sergei Kravenov would be in a live action setting. He moves very animal-like, and he's super strong, and there's so many cool scenes where they utilize him moving like a jungle creature, and it's done really well. And like, there's a lot of times where it's like a fine line between when it's clearly a CG Aaron Taylor Johnson versus a regular Aaron Taylor Johnson, but he is so physical in this movie. And there is a scene where he takes his shirt off, and it's literally for no reason, like none at all. And because the scene immediately following, he's got his shirt back on and stuff. But it's the eye candy for whomever might enjoy it. I would have at one point said for the ladies, but anyone can enjoy his eye candy. It's very Hugh Jackman like eye candy. So everyone can appreciate that. Aaron Taylor Johnson did a great job. They did a great job portraying Kravenov and his physicality. I really appreciated that. I was worried. Now, the origin of how it happens, it's a little sus. It's a little, there's some contrivances in the film. I'm not saying it's all positive. There are some contrivances where you're like, bro, that's for script only. Like, the only reason you did that is because you're trying to get to this point. This action, this decision from this character doesn't make sense at this point, but you're doing it because I know you need to get to this point, right? So there's a couple of those in the movie, but really, that's the bulk of my criticisms for the film. I really just let myself go over to it. The music is something that actually let me really buy into it. They did a really great job. It starts with a Russian song playing during the opening scene, and it plays so well. But then there's cool, part of why it stuck out to me is because they use a lot of there's a lot of moments that use choir in the score, and I always am appreciative of that, and it rings a little bit like it really. I don't know. I really find it effective when it's used correctly or effectively in cinema. And I think it was here. So the music was really good. The action was really cool. The main character was really awesome, well portrayed, and the core story was engaging. And if you've seen the trailer, you know that Rhino does come into it, and the way that they do it, I was kind of a fan of. It's a little kind of little soupçon of Bane, kind of, but you'll see what I mean when you see it. It's yes and no. But the way they did it, I was like, okay, all right, I'll buy into this. Sure, why not? You know, considering it's a comic book movie. I had so much of a better time in this than I thought I was going to. Well, and that's not even, I thought the trailers looked good, and so I was like cautiously optimistic. But walking out of the theater, as pleased as I was, and by the way, there's 0 post-credit or mid-credit scene. Just so you know, I do recommend you stay just to give everyone that worked on it the flowers of at least looking at their names. But don't worry about missing a scene if you have to get home for the kids or anything like that. There's nothing when the credits start rolling after that point, at least in the press screening that we had. So yeah, acting I enjoyed. You know, everyone. I didn't really find anyone that kind of took me out of it. I think everyone did a great job, but particularly the core 3 family members: Aaron Taylor Johnson, his brother Dimitri, and Russell Crowe as Nikolai has a pretty substantial role. You know, Russell Crowe isn't necessarily in the best shape, and considering he's supposed to be this fantastic hunter, you know, with crazy instincts, it's a little bit of a stretch. But you know, I guess you can buy into the idea that he was so successful in the past that he's kind of let the opulence that he's surrounded himself in get to him a little bit, and maybe overindulged a bit. I suppose if I'm going to fill in the gaps myself, that could be why he looks the way that he does in this film. The Kravinoffs have never been anything but in peak physical condition in the comics, so it was a choice. But Russell Crowe is a great actor, and so he did a good job in the role, even so. And now there's one thing that I find kind of funny. You know, there's his name is Sergei Kravinoff, and there's a couple of times in the movie when someone realizes that he's also Kraven the Hunter, and they're shocked. They're like, Kraven? Yeah, his last name's Kravinoff. Every time someone discovers that he's called Kraven the Hunter, they're like, Kraven? It's like, yeah, fucking, it's the first half of my last name, bro. Like, I don't understand why they played that beat that way multiple times in the movie. That was a silly beat, you know, but you know, I was like, all right, whatever. It's a choice, I guess. But again, I'm kind of nitpicking to find the things. I'm sure that this is going to be torn up by a lot of people. I had a good time. I go to movies to be entertained. I was entertained. The effects were really cool. There was definitely some, just because you know that humans can't do what they're having him do, you know it's CG. But as far as CG goes, I think it was pretty well done CG. And there were a lot of times, like I said, that it was enough. It was lit well enough where I couldn't quite tell, you know, whether it was Aaron Taylor Johnson striking a pose or CG then, you know, morphing into Aaron Taylor Johnson at one point in a shot. So to that end, you know, overall the effects were really good. All the animals looked really cool. I mean, you know, again, just because you know that they're not going to have a fucking human-sized lion in reality up against an actor, you know that's a CG lion, but it looked like a damn good CG lion. So the animals, while being CG, they all looked really good, and you know, they evoked some emotion at times as well. So I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the film. Filmmaking wise, it was really well done. There was a lot of really cool shots, and to you know, really bolster the way they were presenting the action, I feel like they chose a lot of really great angles to do that, where it was like, oh man, it was super dynamic. That's a really great way to put it. Yeah, the camera work was very dynamic. The movie felt very lively. You know what I mean? A lot of movies can feel kind of dead in their presentation, or at least very subtle, you might call it, in their presentation. This one, it wasn't like shaky cam for the sake of shaky cam's sake, which I absolutely despise in film. It was just really well crafted, well designed, well blocked action, and I really appreciated that. Like, it wasn't crazy Transformers 1 and 2, like what the fuck's going on action, like some comic book movies can have. It was really cool. It's a good time at the movies. You know what I mean? It's one of those, and it really doesn't need to be like, yes, we know that Kraven is a Spider-Man villain, but again, they did such a good job with the story, in my opinion, that it didn't need Spider-Man. There are Easter eggs and call-outs and representations of things that they didn't even hint at in the trailer, which I was pleasantly surprised by and were some of my favorite things in the film. But yeah, it was a good time, and I actually would recommend you go see it in the theater. I if you want, just go have a couple brews beforehand. You know, if you're not a beer drinker, take a couple shots, have a couple glasses of wine, whatever is pleasure. Whatever is pleasure, whatever is clever, and whatever is your pleasure became whatever's pleasure. Whatever your vice is, partake of it, and then go watch this movie with some friends. You're gonna have a good time. You're gonna be surprised at how much you enjoy it, I bet. And that's my hope for this. You know, I'm embargoed. It's 10:33 after finishing it. It is a bit long. It's like an hour and 50 to 55 minutes. Started right at 7, and I didn't walk out of there until about 8:59 after watching the credits. So it's definitely, it takes its time, but I didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome. I was engaged. The ends, it did kind of have a little bit of 3 different endings, but I was okay with it. Ultimately, I was like, okay, so that's the cap you went with. Okay, I get it. I suppose the 3 different endings could have just been separated into a mid-credit and a post-credit scene, so they just didn't bother doing that, So, yeah, guys, I recommend seeing this. And I think you're going to have a good time. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But this is one of those ones that I was surprised I enjoyed as much as I did. And like I said, I will revisit it. So just at the very end here, I'm going to spoil the last, just the couple things that I really appreciated, the couple shout outs that they did. So at one point, the Rhino character, who is a human most of the time, but I called out Bane because he basically has a backpack, and he has a condition where if he's not plugged in with this medication that like is plugged in like a catheter all the time, then if he takes that out, his skin starts to change into the hard rhino skin. But apparently he's in pain the whole time that happens, so he keeps this stuff plugged in order to not have that change happen. So kind of the reverse Bane, where Bane would use the venom to bulk up, this guy uses the medication to keep from bulking up. But that was cool. And the thing that he said it was a condition that he went to a doctor in New York and got help, and the doctor's name was Miles Warren. And if you know anything about Spider-Man, you know that Miles Warren is the Jackal. And the Jackal is who created the clone Spider-Man, which set off the Clone Saga and what people considered one of the worst eras of Spider-Man in the 90s. But that is the era that I got into Spider-Man, was literally the Clone Saga. So I love it. I love Spider-Man. I love the Jackal. I love Miles Warren. I love Ben Reilly the Clone, who is actually back and now a villain in the current Spider-Man continuity named Chasm. So that's kind of been a cool thing. But yeah, they name drop Miles Warren, and they actually do it again. They don't name drop him again, but then someone, so basically what happens is Dimitri, the brother, gets injured pretty badly. And then at the end of the movie, they flash forward a year, and Dimitri's better, and he's trying to take over where Nikolai left off, because Nikolai does end up dying at the end of the movie, because he kind of betrayed Sergei in the film. So Sergei essentially lets a giant bear attack and kill Russell Crowe at the very end. And so Dimitri is taking over his father's legacy in spite of what Sergei, he's like, no, don't become father. That's not why I saved you. And then, Dimitri leaves, but before he does, he's like, this last year I had a lot of healing to do, and I got help from a doctor in New York. And I was like, ooh, okay, all right. But he doesn't say Miles Warren, but obviously it's the same doctor. And after he leaves, he like storms out of the bar kind of thing. And as he's walking away from Sergei, Sergei runs up and catches him, and he turns him around, and he's a completely different person. And he's like, you know, people always said I could be a chameleon, because the whole movie he's mimicking people's voices like perfectly. And he's like, people always said I could be a chameleon. And then he like breaks out of his hold and walks away. And as he walks away, his face and everything shifts into the comic book version of the chameleon with the seam right down the middle. It's like a featureless face with a seam right down the middle is what the chameleon looks like in the comic. And they fucking do that. And it is, you know, the chameleon in the comic is a Kravinoff. He is a brother to Sergei. So I forgot entirely about that until they revealed the chameleon. And I was like, holy shit, that's right. So that was really cool. That was really cool for a comic fan, because I've never seen, you know, we've never seen the chameleon in live action. And if they ever actually do a Sinister Six with the Sony Spider-less Verse, now they have Kraven and the chameleon they can bring into it, and Rhino. So this movie got 3 different strong entries into the Secret Six. If they do it, they don't have to put in Madam Web. They could do Morbius. They could do the Vulture. Although I don't know, I don't know if they're still going with him in their universe or not. But yeah, there's 3 of the Sinister Six in this movie, so that was delightful. And yeah, guys, I had a good time. I don't know what to say other than that. So thank you guys very much for watching this review, especially if you've watched all the way this far. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird, and remember, stay scared.